Moving the Goalposts Leftovers. I'm Nick DiMartino, and there's a lot to get to right now. There's a lot to get to. It was right now. Well, it's NFL Sunday now, but it was also just a crazy college football Saturday. A whole lot of upsets, uh, and there's there's a few so there's a few things from college football that I definitely want to get to. One of them has got to be Tennessee. And I was really, really big on Tennessee plus the 3.5 all week against Georgia. And the good news is I was right. So barely. I was right by the good news is Tennessee ended up covering the 3.5 as they should have. They were winning most of that game. But I got to tell you, Tennessee, I mean, I don't know if this game says more about Tennessee or it does about Georgia, but Tennessee just blew that game. They blew that game. I mean, they blew that game terribly. I mean, Max Gilbert missed that chip shot, that easy chip shot of a field goal at the end of the game after it was signed. First of all, they had no business giving up. I mean, Georgia just marched down the field, down 38-30, scores the touchdown, and then the 2-point conversion. Like, that wasn't bad enough. Tennessee makes it all the way back down the field, and then a really easy field goal to win the game. This wasn't even close. I mean, this was not even, it wasn't even like it doinked or anything like that. It's like, it, it almost looked like a video game when like you had the settings wrong and the kick goes like all the way to the right or all the way to the left. That was such a bad kick. Um, and luckily Tennessee ended up getting the ball first in overtime. Otherwise, I think that if Georgia had gotten the ball first, they probably would have scored the touchdown and would have covered the spread, and I would have been screwed. That would have been a bad beat. Like Scott Van Pelt has his bad beat segment. This is like a bad beat close call. Tennessee losing if Georgia covered the spread, that would have been a bad beat. This was, I would say, a close call to that bad beat. And I guess this is just kind of what Georgia does. I guess this is what Georgia does. They find ways to win. Georgia, I don't know how to feel about them yet. I don't really know how to feel about Tennessee yet. But this is just a loss that, look, Tennessee had no business. Tennessee had just no business losing this game. And eh, and looking at the rest of Tennessee's schedule, now they have Alabama, Birmingham next week, and then Mississippi State, and then Arkansas. So it's not really going to be all that difficult. But now Tennessee has very little room for error. Tennessee now has very little room for error if they want to be a playoff team. Uh, Look, they probably weren't expected to make the playoffs, but they have much less room for error. You know, they got to go on the road and play Alabama, and they have to go on the road and play Florida. I mean, the main one I would say is going on the road to beat Alabama. If they can somehow do that, then maybe they can be a playoff team if they can end up going 11-1. But that now they got to win that game. They got to win that game now. And not only do they have to win that game, I mean, I know Florida is not a great team, but like they got to go on the road to play Florida, a Florida team that tends to play like that tends to play Tennessee really tough. Just look at them last year. Florida tends to play Tennessee really tough, and you know they tend to play the top half of the SEC pretty tough. They're going on the road, and it's going to be a Florida team that's not going to have much to play for other than a bowl game. So Florida's going to be trying to play like they're not playing. They're not going to be playing for a playoff spot. They're going to be playing for a bowl game, which basically for a program like Florida is like playing for their dignity. That's what I mean. That game Tennessee can easily step in a landmine. If they had just beaten Georgia, their path to the playoff would have been so much clearer. And now they almost have to go on the road. They basically have to go on the road and beat Alabama. And even if they do end up beating Alabama, it's not crazy to think that they step in a landmine in one of these games. It's not crazy to think that maybe when they go on the road and lose to Kentucky, it's not crazy to think that maybe that they might lose to Oklahoma. Who or like I said, go on the road and lose to Florida. So I think Tennessee, when it comes to their playoff hopes, is right now in a lot of trouble. They're in a lot of trouble. But I'm glad I had my Tennessee bet. I was really big on that Tennessee bet all week, and I understood the opposite side of the argument, which is this is like Kirby Smart is a really Georgia under Kirby Smart tends to be a really good underdog team. Largely because Kirby Smart ends up hyping up his teams as underdogs and using that as motivation. Even though in this game it didn't exactly go that way because they weren't winning for most of that game. Um, Staying in the SEC, by the way, speaking of Florida, LSU beat Florida 20-10, and it was not because of offense on either side. I mean, it was a rather lackluster offensive performance. I expected it to be a little bit better on both sides. I mean, if I had told you, you know what? Actually, I'll do this. I will I'll play because Brian Kelly in the post game press conference was not too happy with a reporter. Shocker. He's always mad at reporters, Brian Kelly. He always has to lecture. He always loses his cool in the press conference. I get it on some level. The press conferences are not fun, but you got to do them. That's kind of just how it is when you're a player or a coach. Here's what he had. Here's here's what Brian Kelly had to say. Uh, Here it is. All right, so he just snapped at a reporter. Here it is.
Brian in the back. I know you love these immediate post game sessions, but what are you seeing with your offense?
Stop. Really? Is that the first question? We won the game 20-10. Try another question. What do you want me to tell you? I just laid it out for you. We played the game to win the game. We played the game to win the game.
All right. How about third down then? What is going on with third down?
It's one game. Last game, we were great on third down. You're looking at this from the wrong perspective. LSU won the football game. Won the game. I don't know what you want from me. What do you want? You want us to win 70-0 against Florida to keep you happy?
No, I think people want to know why you can't run the ball, quite honestly.
We can run the ball. Did you see the last play of the game? That's all you need. You just need one. There's a ridiculous questions. And I'm getting tired of it. That football team just worked their tail off to get an SEC win, and you want to know what's wrong. You know what? You're spoiled. You're spoiled. This team is 17-1 at night. 17-1. Give them some respect. How about that? Give them some respect instead of micro-analyzing every little thing. This is ridiculous. For a group of seasoned reporters, that kind of question is so out of line.
Our community.
All right. So, as you can see, Brian Kelly was not happy with that reporter. Now, here's my thing. I kind of see both sides here. I understand Brian Kelly's side of the argument. Brian Kelly's side is saying, hey, we won the game, and that's what matters. Why are you nitpicking? And I understand that sentiment completely because ultimately what matters is that they won the game, they took care of business, and they took care of business pretty comfortably. They won the game, they took care of business, that's what matters. And I can understand why Brian Kelly, somebody like Brian Kelly, who is constantly ridiculed for never being able to win the quote unquote big game, and is always criticized, for losing that big game like he did last year against USC, for instance, or against Texas A&M or whatever, all sorts of games, when he lost to Florida State week 1 a few years ago. He's always criticized for not winning the big game, even though not all these games are really that big, but they feel like big games if he loses them. And I can understand Brian Kelly. I understand Brian Kelly's perspective, which is like, hey, man, you guys are always criticizing me when I lose. Now you're criticizing me when I win. You're not happy when you're not happy if I lose. You're not happy when I win. So what do you want from me? I understand that side of it because ultimately what matters is that he won. I think he overreacted because he made it sound like it was an out of line question. I mean, to me, a question that's out of line is a question about his personal life or something that is just inappropriate. That has nothing to do with football. I mean, they weren't out of line questions. They were football questions, and they were football questions, and that's what he's there to answer. I mean, they weren't out of line. They were just kind of, you can argue, too negative and not really good selected questions, but they were fair questions nonetheless. I mean, I think it was fair. Although I will say it is on a personal level, I think I'd be a little happier after a win that I personally would not be as lose my temper as you think he wouldn't lose his temper as easily because he's happier after a win. So yeah, I get Brian Kelly's perspective completely. Hey man, we won the game. That's what matters. We took care of business. The flip side is I understand the reporter's perspective too, which is that as a reporter, you have to ask questions to these coaches, and whether it's in a win or in a loss, it's not always going to be about great. It's not always going to be praise. It's not always going to be about good things, because if it's about good things, what questions do you really have? Like, what are you going to do? Say to Brian Kelly, why are you so great? How are you going to be this great every week? I mean, like, how exactly does that work? I mean, of course you can ask questions in a positive light, and he didn't have to get to the negatives. All right, I get that. But at the same time, those are relevant questions. Like it's not crazy. Like, I get that LSU won the game. LSU did win the game. And an ugly win, I'll take it. I feel that way no matter what. I think in college football, teams are sometimes criticized too much for winning. They won. That's what matters. However, as a reporter, you have to ask the head coach relevant questions, football questions. You can't just suck his dick in an interview. Is that what Brian Kelly wanted? Did he want the guy to just be like, Coach Kelly, I don't know how you can be so great. Can you be this great every week? I need you to like. What do you want him? Like, I just don't think that's fair to the reporter, because the truth is, being a reporter and asking questions, it's not an easy thing. I mean, you think it's easy because you don't do it, but you have to understand, like, the reason reporters, like, what do people always complain about with sideline reporters? Is that they ask stupid questions. They ask stupid questions. And the reason sideline reporters often ask stupid questions is because asking good questions is a little harder than you think. And if you think I'm wrong about that, just try it yourself. It might take a little more time than you think. Like, asking good questions in these games, especially after a win, asking the winning head coach. I mean, if it's a loss, it's easy. You have all sorts of problems that could happen, because when you lose, a lot more goes wrong usually than when you win. So you have a lot more questions to ask. It's not quite as much the case when you win. So, as a reporter, you have to ask questions that generate stories. I don't mean like bait, but like, you ask questions that would be interesting to your readers, and I assume in this case. So I can't get mad at the reporter for at least doing his job. Like, I don't think that's fair either. And every coach knows that when you win, everything didn't go great when you win, just like everything didn't go terrible when you lose. So there are places where you can improve even when you happen to win. So I understand the reporter's perspective too. Now, let me just say this. If I had told you that LSU if I had told you before the game that DJ Lagway was going to throw 5 interceptions, what would you think the score was? what would you think the score would be? If I had told you DJ Lagway was going to throw 5 interceptions against LSU, you would have thought the game would have been like 30-10, something like that, at least 30-7, like something close to like a 3-touchdown, 4-touchdown deficit, maybe like 35-8, 35-10, something, 35-7. That, I mean, the 30-10, that's like a conservative one. That's a conservative estimate. No, the score was 20-10. The score was 20-10. It was kind of an ugly win. And by the way, this game went the way it did because of LSU's defense. Like I said, the DJ Lagway 5 interceptions thrown. It wasn't because of their offense. LSU did not win this game because of their offense. In fact, LSU's offense did not score a single point in the second half. That's somewhat of a concern. And I mean, maybe not a concern. Maybe I'm looking into it too much. I mean, look, like I said, Florida, I've said this many times, Florida tends to play the top of the SEC very well, especially after a humiliating loss against South Florida. It's not crazy to think that Florida would play them very well because usually Florida does. Like I say, Florida is the ultimate hypothetical SEC team. If they didn't play in the SEC, they'd probably, if they played in like the ACC or the Big 12, they'd be one of those teams with good records that people talk about. Well, imagine if they played in the SEC. So it doesn't surprise me that Florida played them tough, especially coming off that humiliating loss. But it's not unfair it's not unreasonable if you're an LSU fan to have concerns about LSU's offense when LSU's offense didn't look good. And that's always, I mean, and I don't think that's unfair either because I'm not a fan of any college football team other than other than my picks. But if something like that happens with the Jets and they win, I mean, you like right now the way the Jets are, if they win, I'm happy, I'll take it. But if I have higher expectations for the Jets, like LSU fans have for LSU, which is that they expect to make the playoffs, then yeah, the offense is a little bit of a concern. Like it's not crazy, just like how I think it was a bit of a concern last year that Georgia's offense didn't look great against Austin Peay. I mean, maybe people overreact to it, but it's not crazy to have that concern. And the fact that DJ Lagway threw 5 interceptions and LSU was only able to win 20-10, and that's just because and their offense didn't score at all in the second half. Okay, it's not crazy for me to think that, okay, maybe this might be a little bit of a problem down the road, and maybe this is something that LSU can fix. And by the way, when Brian Kelly responded to the long run at the end of the game, let me be clear. That was a 51-yard run. LSU had a total of 102 yards rushing for the game. So half of all the rushing yards in that game was from a 51-yard play by Caden Durham at the end of the game when it was basically over. Like it was the last drive of the game. So up to that point, they had 51 rushing yards. I don't think it's unfair for a reporter to be like, yeah, that's a little bit of a concern. Because you know what? Most of the time, I mean, or at least against, I shouldn't say most of the time, against really good teams in the SEC, I'm not going to say it's impossible to win games with only 51 yards rushing, but it's going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy. And if you don't establish the run, that's not great. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier was all right. He went 15 for 27 and threw 1 touchdown and 1 interception. It's okay. Probably could be better. But I think all that's a concern for LSU. All that's got to be a concern. And by the way, I was really glad. By the way, there's another win I had. I had LSU minus 7.5. I loved LSU. But yeah, if not for that pick 6 in the third quarter, this game could have gone really different because it didn't look like LSU was scoring a whole lot. Certainly not in the second half. I do want to talk about this bad beat, by the way. In the Penn State Villanova game. I think the spread was 48.5. Now, I don't like touching these really big spreads. I did it with Oregon and Northwestern on the show. I don't know on Forever Power 5. I don't normally do it because I don't know. I'm not picking a team to win by 40 points. It's just too high sometimes, I think. But Penn State, they were favored by I think 48.5 against Villanova. And in the final second, I wish I had the video. In the final seconds of the game, Villanova scores a touchdown covering the spread. Isn't that unbelievable? I've never seen anything like this. Here it is. Hold up. Here it is. I have it right here. I'll share my I have it right here. I'll share my screen. Hold on a second. Here it is.
Maddox on the final play of the game. Rolling right. What's he got? Maddox lets it fly. It is! Oh, man! What a catch by Brandon Binkowski. His first career touchdown catch.
Not only was it like a Hail Mary, it was just like in the middle. It was just totally, I mean, it wasn't like he was throwing it down the field, but it was like he was just guessing when he threw that pass. Let's be honest. It was just like basically threw a Hail Mary across his body. He had no idea where it was going. And then on top of that, the receiver, it's not even like it landed in the receiver's lap. It was a one-handed catch. And that covered the spread. The spread was 48.5. That is what I am so thoughts and prayers to anybody who had Penn State in that game. Thoughts and prayers to you because that is bad. That is such a bad beat. That is one of the worst beats I've ever seen. And also, I was right about the Texas A&M. I keep talking about how I was right. Here's what I was wrong about. I was wrong about South Carolina, Vanderbilt. I'm not going to have time to get to that. I'll get to that on the show, but on the podcast. But Notre Dame lost to Texas A&M, and it actually went very similar to how I thought it would go, except a little higher scoring than I expected. Texas A&M ended up, well, I wouldn't say simple. I didn't think Texas A&M would win outright, but I thought Texas A&M would cover the spread. Texas A&M ends up winning 41-40 on that final drive. And by the way, Marcel Reed didn't even play that good of a game. Like, I was stunned Marcel Reed was even able to get into the end zone at that point. Like, I was stunned he was able to do that. Marcel Reed, he completed less than half of his passes. They were like, he threw the ball a lot, but he wasn't efficient. Like, he was definitely like Marcel Reed was not playing efficiently. He threw the ball a lot, but he wasn't efficient. And I couldn't believe that they were able to get down the field. I mean, for Notre Dame, because Marcel Reed, it looked like he was struggling in that final drive. And, for Notre Dame, this is a killer. I mean, they almost came back to beat Miami, but that would have been more on Miami blowing the game than Notre Dame winning the game. And you know what? That's a forgivable loss. It's like, whatever. They lost to Miami. I get it. But the problem with Notre Dame, and this is true every single year, Notre Dame plays too weak of a schedule to lose more than 2 games. And even 2 games might be too many. Notre Dame plays too weak of a schedule. Notre Dame, for the rest of their schedule, I mean, who do they really have on their resume? The best team that Notre Dame has on their resume going forward is USC. And they're 10.5-point favorites. Next week, they play Purdue. Then they go and play at Arkansas. You think the committee's really going to be looking at those? I mean, USC might actually. I actually think USC might end up being pretty good this year, but it's not going to be that good of a win. And with you might end up getting 4 SEC teams, 4 Big Ten teams, maybe 3 Big Ten teams more realistically. And then you get your Big 12 team and at least one Big 12 and at least one ACC team, possibly another ACC team. And then of course the at-large at-large bid for the group of the group of 5 team that has to get in every year. So, Notre Dame might end up being in big trouble. A lot of it depends on how the SEC plans. I think a lot of it is going to depend on Michigan. I think Michigan specifically, a lot of it is going to depend on, because they are a team that may or may not get in, and how the SEC plays out. Like the whole SEC and the ACC a little bit too. I guess it's good for them that Clemson lost, because Clemson's going to have to win the ACC in order to get it. So it certainly is possible that Notre Dame gets in, but my God, they are skating on thin ice. By the way, I'm going to the Jet game later today, switching to the NFL. I'm going to the Jet game. It's my first Jet game of the season. I like going to the games earlier because it's warmer. I'm not a big fan of sitting out. I'm not a big fan of sitting out in like 30-degree weather or getting rained on or anything like that. Like a lot of people like to pretend they're really tough when it comes to going to football games. Look, I went to a Giants-Titans game one year, and they were like two of like the 5 worst teams in the league, and I felt like I was going to get frostbite. I'm never doing that again. All right, I'm never doing that again. I'm a Jet fan. I'll go to the Jet games. I go for the environments and all that. But I want to go. When I go to games, I don't want the weather to be a problem. I don't want the weather to be a problem. And I like that right now, the weather is not a problem. At least not yet. Like right now, the weather's not a problem. I also like that I have club seats. So I can go inside. If the weather isn't good, I can go inside. I can get food and all that. So I have I don't like sitting with the non-club seats. Like I'm spoiled in that sense. I only want the club seats when I go to games. In terms of how this game is going to go, I love the Jets plus 6.5. I think they're probably going to lose the game outright, but whatever. That's fine. I don't expect them to win outright. But when it comes to the spread pick, love the Jets. I'm hammering the Jets here, plus 6.5. At least that's what it was when I last checked. It might even be a little higher now. It might be up to like 7. The Jets at MetLife Stadium, they play the Bills tough. And don't forget about the Ed Oliver injury. Ed Oliver is not playing. So that might end up hurting the Bills a bit too. Love the Jets today. And I guess the thing I hate the most about MetLife Stadium is I've said it many times, customer service, terrible. And also the coffee, they do Starbucks coffee. They do Dunkin' coffee. The only coffee you can get is Dunkin'. Dunkin' coffee is disgusting. If they had Starbucks, I would appreciate that, but they don't. They only have Dunkin', which sucks. By the way, the Mets lost 8 in a row. What a disgrace the Mets have been. Edwin Diaz picked up, and of course, Edwin Diaz ended up picking up the loss. Guess who picked up the win for the Rangers? Phil Maton. Remember Phil Maton, who everybody hated last year because in the playoffs? Of course, Phil Maton ended up picking up the win. The Mets last year, you're not going to get that every year. And what I mean by that is you're not going to get the OMG Mets. You're not going to get a team that was like the underdog, who didn't have a whole lot of expectations, that ends up going to the NLCS and then only losing to the Dodgers, which are like a super team. You're not going to get that every year. And the Mets last year were a team without expectations. This year, if my analogy would be, last year the Mets were like the freshmen in college. You could enjoy yourself a little bit, go party, whatever. Now, this year the Mets are like upperclassmen. juniors, seniors. You have to look for a job. You have to make sure your grades are good. You can't just have fun all the time anymore. That's what the Mets are this year. And quite frankly, they're failing it. Now, their lead in the wild card race is now half a game over the Giants. Half a game. So the Mets, I think, are in a lot of trouble. If this continues, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. In terms of like fire, I'm not saying anybody should be fired. I'm saying Steve Cohen should sell the team or anything like that. But it's going to be a long off season. It's going to be a long off season. If this continues from the Mets. It's going to be a long off season. Anyway, that's leftovers this week. You can see me on Wednesday on Moving the Goalpost. So see you guys then.